Hello, everybody, and welcome to this eMarketeer Academy on news and Ask an Expert. And I'm super excited, more than usual, because today I have Sebastian with me. Good morning, Sebastian.
Good morning, Klaus.
Excited. This is our first webinar together. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm feeling as ready as I can be.
As ready as can be. Well, that's all we can ask for, right?
Guess so.
I've brought in Sebastian, obviously, because I guess many of you guys know Sebastian already. He is an eMarketeer black belt, a consultant, and support ninja. And he's been with us for, geez, I didn't even know how long, Sebastian, but you grew up
12
in this
years.
company, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and my slides, and Sebastian and I will stay on screen as well, and we'll do this webinar as a duo. So today we're going to talk about the latest news in eMarketeer. We've released a couple of things lately that we think could do a little highlighting. We're going to look a little bit at what's coming in the upcoming release, which is just, a week or two away or so. And then we're going to hand it over to Sebastian and your questions. We've received a lot of questions beforehand during the webinar, and we look forward to giving you some answers and inspiration on that. My name is Klaus. I'm a product evangelist here at eMarketeer. And as mentioned, I have Sebastian on the webinar today, who is our consulting and support guru. The webinar, as per usual, will be around 45 to 60 minutes today, depending on how many questions you guys have. We will all be on mute, but you can go ahead and submit your questions in the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. So please go ahead and do that, and we will try to moderate through the questions as best possible. I don't know how many questions you guys will send us, so maybe if we cannot answer all of the questions, we'll do our best to follow up after the webinar with some frequently asked question stuff to you guys. The webinar will be recorded, so don't worry too much about where we click or where Sebastian does different things. You can always go back to the recording and deep dive into the details there, so don't be too worried about that. As mentioned, we're going to look at some recent news we've released in eMarketeer, what's coming in the next couple of weeks, and then spend the majority of our time on the Q&A session with Sebastian. All right, so first off, let's look at some recent news and releases we've done in eMarketeer, just briefly going through what they were all about, and hopefully helping you getting the most out of those different things. The first one, which came out not too long ago, were the campaign reports. And campaign reports have been used by a lot of you guys. We're seeing a broad variety of usage, and it's really, really cool. And it's definitely something that we will be throwing more attention to as we move forward, making more of these widgets. For now, and for the release, we had the funnel chart, the goal gauge, and the KPI counter. And I'm just going to go through how you set these up and what they can do for a campaign real quick. So as you will have noticed, once you're in an open, campaign, you will see the campaign reporting canvas available to you up here. So I have, in this case, a very simple event, an invitation, a registration, and an on-site check-in form. So by clicking the Add Campaign Reporting, I can add these widgets to my campaign reporting, and I can use 1, 2, 3, or 4 widgets in my dashboard there. I'm just going to set up one of each so you can get a feel of what they're all about. Firstly, the funnel chart. I get to choose the components I have in my campaign, and I can align different components and different actions up in my funnel chart so I can visualize how my contacts are kind of trickling through the funnel of my campaign. So the first thing I'm going to add is the invitation, and I'm going to count how many invitations were delivered. That gives me a bar chart in the graph here. Then I can add how many have clicked the invitation. And now you can already see the funnel action going on here. So 20 people got my invitation, 17 people clicked, and the chart will calculate the conversion between each step. And as I continue, I can add the registration form, how many people submitted that. So now I see the email is the blue one here, the registration form is the green one, and I can see how many actually clicked to see the form and how many actually submitted the form. And then finally, I'm going to add the on-site check-in form and how many people submitted that. So in just a few steps, I can use the components in my campaign to create a funnel view of the conversions from step to step in my campaign and also across the entire funnel. So I can see from 20 people that got the invitation to 12 people that were on site, that's a 60% conversion across the entire funnel. And I can see the conversion rates from step to step as well. So that's pretty easy to set up the funnel chart, and it gives you a nice flow or overview of the process there. I'm going to resize this one to take up 2 widget spaces. As you can see, it is now half of the widget canvas used, and I can add 2 more smaller widgets over here to the right. So just go ahead and add 2 more, starting with the goal gauge. As before, it's pretty much the same thing. I can add the component from my campaign. In this case, I'm going to look at the registration form and how many people submitted the registration form. I can set a target, so it will show me how close I am to my target. And I can also change the caption if I want to, and even the chart color. So once I update that, I see that I have registered guests. I'm at 14, my target was 18, and I'm thus 78% close to my target. So that is the goal gauge. You look at one component, one action, and you can set a target to compare your current performance towards your target. Nice visualization of a goal or a KPI there for you. Then only one spot left on the canvas. Since I used 2 for this one for this widget, I'm going to add obviously a KPI counter for the last one. And I'm curious about how many people actually signed up to my or actually visited my event. So I'm going to look at the on-site check-in form, how many submissions that had. I can change the caption. That's basically all there is to it. I have my KPI counter. So in just a few steps, you can visualize the performance of your campaign using 1, 2, 3, or 4 widgets across the top there in the campaign reporting canvas. So give it a spin, try it out in your campaigns where it makes sense. It's just a nice way to really highlight the key performance indicators of that campaign. So I just wanted to give a quick recap on that one. Next one is, it's a very small thing, but it's quite powerful, and it's something that's helped make a basic functionality much, much, much easier. So I just wanted to spend 10 seconds on that one, and that is our search capability now. When you go to the contacts page where you find all of the people you have in eMarketeer, you now have a search field. Previously, before this, you had to create a filter for a specific field to search for something, but now you can simply type in a search string and it will search all of the contact fields for that value. So if I'm looking for Acme here, I will find a contact where it's in the company name, where it's in the title, the email address, the name. It will search the different fields of the contact card, quickly focusing in on what I'm searching for. So that is a much requested feature, and we're happy to throw that into the last filter release there. Also in the filters release, obviously, is the brand new filter builder and everything that you can now do to really focus in on a specific target group amongst your contacts. So it was a huge update, and it's going to lay the foundation for a lot of cool things that are coming later and this year and early next year. The filter builder is found in the right-hand side here on the contacts screen. When you click that, you get the filter builder and your saved filters. The filters are really just a way to focus in on a group of contacts in the database by looking at their contact cards, their engagement, and everything you really know about these contacts in eMarketeer. So the first thing you choose is which fields do you want to filter in on, and do you want to make the criteria for your filter here. So the first one, I'll let you look at engagement, which is really everything they've done in eMarketeer. Every click, every visit, every form answer, every SMS click, and so on. You can look at that in engagement. Contact fields, all the fields on the contact card. So names, titles, companies, countries, all the values you've added to the contact field, you can filter on those. Delivery, so was the delivery of emails successful or unsuccessful? Dates, when were they created or updated? Consent, you can look at all of your contacts without a marketing consent, or all of the contacts that have withdrawn their consent. You can look at subscriptions, and you can use contact lists. So all of these things you can use as criteria for your filter. In this first example here, or in the example here, I'm going to look at engagement, and you can see email form, SMS landing page, and even your website. So if you're using the web monitor and the web monitor script in eMarketeer, you can look at your website and see whom of your eMarketeer contacts have been on your different pages of your website. So I'm going to grab my Avenir demo, my demo website, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to want to look at people who visited my website and a specific page on my site. And then the filter will bring up the pages from the website where the web monitor is installed that has had traffic. I'm going to choose the Porsche page on my demo site and apply that filter. So now the list here contains the contacts in eMarketeer that have visited the Porsche page on my site and have been picked up by the web monitor. I'm going to add one more criteria, and that is an OR criteria. You can see you have the and the OR buttons. If you choose and, obviously both of your criteria would have to be met in order for people to be in this filter result. If you add OR, it's either they've visited the website on the specific page or something else that I'm going to set up now. So you can play around with the and or operators to get different results for your filters. The more and criteria you add, the more narrow and the higher requirements there are to be in the filter result. And if you add or, you can obviously create larger filter results based on all of these fields you can choose from. So I'm going to look at the contact fields, and on the contact card, I have a check mark called Porsche. That is, if this person has an interest in Porsche, maybe they've downloaded a brochure or clicked a link or whatever that has added this interest to the contact card. So I'm going to say the field Porsche on the contact card is checked, and then apply the filter. And now I have 18 contacts. So what I'm really filtering out here is people that have visited this page on my website, or they have Porsche checked on their contact card. So that's it. That's how I can combine criteria to create filters to create a target group, or just look at the contacts that match these different criteria. I can go ahead and save and give my filter a name. In this case, I'm going to call it target group Porsche and save that filter. You will see it down here in the save filters list. And I can also add it as a favorite. That means it will pop up over here for a quick retrieval. So it's kind of a shortcut to the filters that I have built. So if I have some filters that I use frequently, I can add them to favorites so I can quickly grab them from over here. And that's how you build filters. You can add one criteria or a whole list of criteria to be met by your filter builder. The cool thing about filters is that they're dynamic. So I set up the filter now, but when I retrieve the filter later, it may include more people if more people have visited the website or more automations have added that check mark to the contact card. So the filter really is dynamic and automatically pulls out the people that match the criteria in the filter whenever I look at the filter. That's great also because you can distribute emails and SMSs to filters. So you can create a filter now, and then 2 weeks from now, you can send an email to that filter, and all of the contact that matches the filter criteria will be included in your send out 2 weeks from now when you do that. So that's pretty nice. Okay, so that was filters. I really do hope you go ahead and play around with that. We have some support articles as well on filters and some tutorials, and I'll try to remember to include those in the follow-up email that we're going to distribute after the webinar. Just a few more recent news here. We had the send card and the send out health. So when you go ahead and send an email, let's say I'm sending this email, I want to send it to all of the contacts in my campaign. At some point, I go continue to checklist, and this is the new checklist that shows you what you're about to do. And it contains a lot more information now than it did previously. It tells you about any duplicates and unsubscriptions, withdrawn consents. So it basically gives you an expectations alignment. You have addressed this number of people. We're going to pull out some of these people from the send out for various reasons. You'll also see a warning here. You will resend this email to 16 contacts. Apparently, I have already sent this email to some of the folks, and I haven't check marked the don't send to people who already got the email. So this is a great screen to just briefly look at how is the send out going to perform, what is the subject, and so on, what is the spam score, and I can check at the spam report, just to give me that overview of my email before I send it out. Once I launch, I will end up on the email report, and I can have a look at how the report is doing. And most of this stuff you guys are well aware of. You can click the different numbers to see the list over here. You can bulk update and export from that view as well. So a lot of this is not just a pretty face. You can really work with this report as well in the overview here. At the bottom here, we've added recently some new widgets, and those are around send out health, right? So when you send out your email, it may bounce. There may be addresses that do no longer exist or that have some transient problems there. They will be reported in the bounce health, and we have a complaint rate dial there as well. Complaints are when people in their email inbox says this is spam. For instance, if you're on Gmail and you report something, this is spam, that would be a complaint, and we can measure these complaint rates. You'll see there are some limits that you shouldn't be going over, both with regards to bounce and complaint, and they really have to do with your sender reputation and the sender reputation of eMarketeer as a whole. We want to make sure that we are listed as good senders to give you an optimal email delivery and email performance there. So we are closely monitoring this automatically. If some accounts they raise past the bounce rate limit or the complaint rate limit, we will intermittently pause these accounts to figure out what's going on and help you guys out, lowering the bounce rate or the complaint rates, and then opening up the send out again. So we will work with you on that, but just making sure that you are not damaging your sender reputation and the sender reputation of eMarketeer once you are doing that. There's a small more information link down here. If you're curious about these things, do go ahead and click that and read more about this on our support site. All right. Now let's look at what's coming in the near future, and the biggest news here is really all around security. Security is a growing concern and should be a major topic in many organizations. We had the whole spiel with GDPR and data privacy, and security really plays into that as well, because you should be making sure that you are using the best practices available to secure the data that you control. So we're going to implement a new login and security system. And the key here is you can continue as is, as you know it, with your username and password. The login screen will change. You will be asked to create a new password once the new login system is implemented. But other than that, it's business as usual. Only it's even more secure just if you use your username and password. This system that we're putting in place is really looking at what's going on. It's looking at brute force attempts and other known techniques for hacking into an account using different techniques. And this system that we're putting in place is really experts in managing that. So even if you just continue with the username and password, it will be even more secure than it is today. But the biggest change probably is that you can go ahead and add a multi-factor authentication, or the admin of your eMarketeer account can add multi-factor authentication. You may be familiar with this from your bank or other government sites and so on, where you log in with a username and password and some kind of code that is either sent to you via text message or email or using an authenticator app. And we will introduce the SMS and the email multi-factor, as well as the Google Authenticator app two-step login. So those are different ways that you can really tighten the security around your eMarketeer account. This is controlled by the account admin and can be set up for all users. So that is coming in the near future. So what you should expect if your account has the multi-factor authentication activated is that you will be signing in using username and password. Then you will receive either a text or an email or a code in your Google Authenticator app, depending on what setup your admin has chosen. And then that code will need to be entered into the login box. So that means that eMarketeer knows who you are because of your username and password, and that it's actually you trying to log in, because we've also sent a code to your personal device there. So why are we doing this? I probably think that most users haven't really been sitting around dreaming about a new login process for eMarketeer, but it's really a growing demand from both from clients across the segment, small, medium, large to enterprise level, increased demand for multi-factor authentication. So we are going to follow that request and implement that. It is really a strong way of dealing with authentication, knowing who you are, and authorization, knowing what you're allowed to see and use in the app. So that's the basis foundation for that. Then, as mentioned, the multi-factor authentication, that is not an option we have today. That is going to be available using the new system if you guys choose to do so with your admin in eMarketeer. And as mentioned, anomaly detection, that was a tricky word, really that the login system keeps track of, are people trying to break into your account using just multiple attempts of passwords, or are they attacking your login from different IP addresses? Are there suspicious IP addresses that the system knows are kind of bad that are trying to log in, and the system just keeps track of all that. So that is really, really cool. So not a lot you need to do. First off, when the system is implemented, you will be asked to enter your username, and you will be getting a password reset email. You put in a new a password, and then you're good to go using eMarketeer just as you're used to. If you have access to more than one eMarketeer account, you will be asked to select from a drop-down which eMarketeer account you're logging into. So this is probably for you guys with enterprise setups and stuff like that. You will see a drop-down that allows you to log into different accounts using just that one username and password, and optional the multi-factor authentication. The account settings page will change, so where you add users will change slightly. And now you will see whether multi-factor authentication has been switched on. This is the admin view. And you can now, as an admin, invite users, which basically means that you add an email address, the user will get an email asking them to go ahead, create their account, set up their password, and so on. So the admin will no longer be creating users, but rather inviting users into eMarketeer. That's the only difference there. All right, so without further ado, that was my part of keeping you up to date with what has been going on and what is happening soon. Now it is over to Sebastian, asking an expert. Welcome to the stage, Sebastian.
Thank you very much, Klaus.
I am going to hand over the screen to you, and I will be going through the questions that have been sent to us prior to the webinar, as well as the questions that you guys are sending in on the Q&A box. So keep them coming. I will do my best moderating this while you fly the controls there, Sebastian. Let's see.
Yes, let's see what we do here.
You should be getting a presenter notice on your screen.
Let's see which screen is showing.
That's always interesting. I can just have a look at which screen you're getting.
Can we see eMarketeer on my screen?
I can see eMarketeer on your screen. You're good to go.
Excellent. All right.
All right. So the first question that popped in, Sebastian, that I know you had a look at is around forms and the way you capture data. The question is it possible to create progressive forms in eMarketeer? So perhaps first a quick explanation on what a progressive form is, and then head on.
Yeah, so as we can see, I've prepared a few campaigns here, and one of them is titled Progressive Forms. And a progressive form is generally when you have call to action forms on your site, or forms in general on your site, where you submit, they're not asking for a lot of data. Instead of asking for all the data at once, if it can recognize that you already filled out the form once before, or perhaps 2 times before, they are keeping asking you for new data. So it's not too much to fill out. So the benefit of that is, of course, that it's easy to fill out 1 or 2, perhaps 3 fields of data. But if you want to fill out 12 fields right away, perhaps it's more daunting, and you miss out on a lot of opportunity to capture the data. We don't have exactly a way of doing it that smartly, but I have a neat little trick that you could use if you'd like to ensure that people fill out the form with a minimal data, and then perhaps can expand on that with more data at a later stage, or rather right away. So if we take a look at my progressive form campaign here, it consists of 2 different forms. I've chosen to name them first form, which will ask for an email address, and second form, which will ask for full contact details. And the idea here is that the first form will redirect you to the second form upon submit, where you will be identified. So how would I go about and do that, you ask? So if we do ignore the design of this form, it's basically just an email field for the capture. This could be implemented on your site via iframe or the normal form code, which can be styled on your site. And we will be using the thank you page to actually. The thank you page is you can either use the hosted thank you page, which looks something like this, or you can use a custom URL. And here I've actually used a form URL as the custom URL, which will take me to the second form. The way you would go about and do that is, of course, by going back into the campaign and go to the second form publish options, and here use the direct URL. But as you know, using this direct URL, the form visit will be anonymous. So I'm going to get past that problem by actually adding a so-called identifier to the form. So if I just paste the URL in here, you will see it's ending with origin equals direct. We can just remove this. We don't need that part. It's only to capture traffic sources to the form. And here I want to add an identifier. There are multiple types of identifiers. You can identify based on email or external ID, which would be unique identifiers for the contact, and even scramble. But since we're not using an email, this will not be using scramble here. So I will just type ident equals email. So that means that I will identify based on email, and then I have to say which email is it that I want to identify by, and then we add another and sign here, and says val, which means value, and then I could potentially just type an email here, but since we want this to be dynamic based on the answers of the form, I'm going to add a personalization here. And I know this like the inside of my palm, so I'm just gonna type it.
If you can zoom in a little bit in your browser, Sebastian, at some point it'll make it a little bit easier to.
Yeah, so now we can see contact field email here. So those that have worked with personalization of emails will know this one for sure. We have contact fields, yeah, for first name, last name, and so on. And if now this is a little bit of a small, maybe we can just take out the whole URL here and just show it here. So at the end here, we choose ident equals email, and then val equals contact field email. And what it will do, it will identify based on the email address provided in the first form. So this is the correct size. All right, so if we just update here, we will now be able to identify this, and I'm going to demonstrate by publishing this first form. I'm going to the second tab, and if I just type my email address like so and send this in, you can see that it's already filled out all my contact details because I already had them in the form, or rather in this account. If I didn't have my contact card already here and used a new email address, of course, only the email address should be shown here. And yeah, so you could either do this to request more information, contact data, or answer certain other types of questions like checkboxes and whatnot.
Cool. That'll
Yeah,
definitely help you keep conversions up by having a short form in the beginning. And then once you're sure you've captured the data, you can ask more questions that doesn't hurt your conversion, but will enrich your data. That's pretty awesome. So I hope that covered that questions around progressive profiling and forms in eMarketeer. Anything more you want to add here, Sebastian, before we move on to the next question?
I think that covers it. No, not really. It's just that simple.
All right, cool. The next question, I guess, also has to do with data capture and making sure that your data is correct. And there's a question here that says, how do you create double opt-in in eMarketeer?
Yeah, so the double opt-in, it actually has to be built as a campaign where we do have a capture form, perhaps for the email address to begin with, and then we can send out an email containing a link to another form where we actually ask the relevant questions, capture the relevant data, such as usually use double opt-in forms for newsletter subscriptions, right? So the first
just
thing
a word
that we
maybe
want to do
on what double opt-in means, I guess, if people aren't aware. Double opt-in basically means that once you sign up to something, the system makes sure that it's actually you signing up, right? So if I go to a website and sign you up for a newsletter that you don't want, the system will send an email to you before it starts really distributing the email. So in that email, you can confirm that that's your identity. That's the double opt-in process, I guess.
Yeah, so it's all about verifying the email address and making sure that it belongs. Because if it's going if you fill out the first website form that captures the email address and it sends you an email to that actual email address, then we can make sure it's the correct person that's actually doing this. So I've prepared a little campaign for this, and it starts off very similar to the other campaign. So it's actually quite similar. But instead of redirecting you to the second form right away, we're sending an email to verify that it's actually you that's signing up. So yeah, the first form, again, this can be put on your site through various means. It could be as, again, an iframe or a link or anything. You go with the usual publish options. I can just mention how you would get it into the website. So on the publish options, we have website integration, and we basically have two options here, iframe or form, if you want to put the form on your website. And this one, I guess, is a little bit easier to use if you do not have any resource that can actually beautify the form and add styling to it, because this basically gives you a skeleton HTML that will not look very nice unless you actually code it. So, but anyways, what we need to do here is to make sure that this website form actually sends out an email that in turn leads to the second form. So if we just have a brief look at the email that I've created, it's just a brief email saying that we're almost there. We're glad you're subscribing to our email content. Please verify your email address below by clicking the button and filling out the form. So what we're going to have to do is to make sure that this email is sent out after this form has been submitted. So we will be using automations for that. Automations, as you know, hopefully know, is a way to make things happen by automation in eMarketeer once certain criteria are met. So I'm just going to click the automation tab here and click create new automation to get a list of the different automations that I can use. And the automation that I'm going to use is, of course, send an email, because I want to send out the verify email. So I'm going to select which email I want to send and when it should be sent. Basically, that's the options I get to choose from here. And I want to send the verify email. It's the only email in the campaign without any delay. So it's a 0-hour delay. And we can actually remove this send once per contact, because I usually recommend that this only is, you should only use this one if you have it based on link clicks or email opens and things like that, meaning the trigger of the form. Because we don't want to send 3 emails within 3 minutes. But when form submit, you actually expect you to get a verify email every time. So that's why we unclick this box. And then we have to choose the event that should send this email. And that's when this event occurs down below here. So we can choose from all the components in the campaign. And of course, actually, this is all, you don't really have to configure this now, because it's this component website form, when it's submitted, that's when we want to send this email. I can briefly show you other types of, no, maybe not. I'm going to keep it simple, and when the form website form is submitted, that's when we want to send the verify email. So we just save this automation. And we go back to the list of our automations, and we can see that when a form website form is submitted, we are going to send the verify email. All right, very good. If we go back to our components, we can now see there's a bolt saying that this is triggered by an event, meaning that these two are connected in some way, or at least have automations connected to them. Then the last thing we want to do is, of course, link to the second form, and we can do that as a personal link, meaning that the form will be pre-filled with our data already known to us. Actually, I had already prepared for that, but I can show you quickly how to do the link. Link to eMarketeer form. And we're going to use a personal link in this case, because we know it's always going to be the person that receives the email, the original recipients that are going to click it, and we're going to link it to the second form. This is the second form in campaign double opt-in. Perfect. We apply and we save. And now, basically what we have ensured now is that if I submit the website form, I'm going to get a verified email. That email in turn goes to the second form. And from here, we can add, depending on how we want to set up our subscriptions and so on, we can add different types of automation that adds, for example, of course, I went with Audi. It should be Chevrolet. I saw it. I'm new to the Avenir's brands. All right. So basically, here, our newsletter sign up, fill out this form. I want to receive information regarding Porsche and Chevrolet. We could add different types of automations to actually fill out our contact fields on our contact card based on this, and so on, or add to different contact lists, or update our CRM system with different types of automation. I'm not going to go into details on how to do that. I guess for now, this basic flow on how to set up this verification email leading to the second form, I guess should be enough for now. So we don't go into too much detail there.
That's right. You and me, Sebastian, we can keep talking into details throughout the rest of the day. But this is a good example. Really, the crux here is making sure that the identity of the person that signs up the newsletter is actually the one getting the newsletter, and you use that verify email to do that. So once they click that link, we know that the email ended up in the right inbox, and from that you can automate and do different things depending on how fine-grained you want your data capture to be and your subscription automations and so on. But the basic idea is there. Awesome. So the next question here, now we've got our email, we know that they're the right persons. There's a question around delivery or spam. The question is, I have a very low open rate on some of my emails. I suspect they may be filtered as spam. Do you have any suggestions on how to avoid being filtered as spam? I know this is a very broad question, and eMarketeer does something for spam prevention on its own, but maybe you have some more ninja tricks there, Sebastian?
Yeah, I have a few things that I always check with these customers that have issues with spam, and because we have to, of course, now we're on the new email system, we will always be sending from a verified email address or a verified email domain. So that should not be an issue anymore. It could be that we have problems delivering internally, but that's a kind of different topic altogether. It's always more difficult to deliver internally because it's harder to scrutinize the email domain when sending from an external source such as eMarketeer. But let's say we have some issues delivering to external recipients, and I usually always check for links in the email that have an URL as a caption. And I wanted to highlight this example just to make sure that no one ever does this mistake again. I see basically everyone does it at some point because they perhaps don't know about it. And I've provided with an example here. If we look at, I've segmented it into bad practice and best practice. So if we have a look at these links here, they are using what I call a URL as a caption. And this is an email address as a caption. This is a website address as a caption. And why this is problematic is there are quite easy ways for a computer or rather a software to understand whether or not these are malicious links or spoofed links. You know, when we're sending out an email, we're automatically tracking all the link clicks in that mail. And the way that we do that is that the traffic goes from the email to eMarketeer, where the link is tracked. So it's through our web server, and then it goes to the link to the address that we specify here, and that becomes problematic because if you use a caption that is a URL like this, then the source of the link, rather the destination of the link, will be eMarketeer, but it's saying in clear text that a software can understand that it's going to avenir.com, and when there's a mismatch between avenir.com and eMarketeer.com, that's when it freaks out, says this is spoofing. So how would you go about and get around that problem? It's basically to replace any type of line that looks like this with what we see below here. So when we're using a text caption instead of a link URL caption like this, then it can be no comparison between the domains. So they don't know if send us an email means actually going to the website or anything like that. So that when we have a link like this, that's it's much better. So that's the first thing I check. Does the email contains any sort of links like that? That could very well be a reason for it to be filtered as spam. But then, of course, there's lots of other reasons, such as sender reputation and what kind of list hygiene do you have? Do you use double opt-in for all your contacts, or are you sending to mainly info addresses? Or there's so it's does the recipients receive the content that they've asked for? And if they haven't specifically asked for it, then there's a high chance of it being filtered through various mechanisms, such as learning which content that the recipient engages with. Gmail, for example, is notorious for this because if you're sending to a lot of email addresses and Gmail understands after some time that you're not engaging with the content, the recipients are not engaged in the content at all, then it will be sorted into different boxes and then ultimately vanish altogether into spam. So that's, but what you can do is of course make sure you don't have any links like this. That's the first thing to check. That should, if you had some problems and you had a link like that, then I'm guaranteeing that at least some of those filters that would go past them. I'm not sure how much more we want to add to that.
That's a really practical and hands-on advice right there. I I definitely know that I have emails with captions like that. So thanks for that tip. Let's say that typically in your email footer is where you will, both by requirements, by local law somewhere, and also by practicality, you would have your address and maybe your website and an email address. Is there a way to kind of get around this where you can actually have the email address spelled out as the email address, or is the only viable way to go to make them as text captions right there?
Yes, I think it looks like you've been looking at this email template, because I actually forgot to mention that we do have added some footers, or at least one footer where, as you can see here, these links are actually good to go. I think we will be adding some more of these examples, because you want to highlight those addresses. And the reason why these work in this specific scenario is because we're not tracking the link clicks on these ones. So we have made them specially not to be tracked. So you can use this type of footer in this email template with good conscience. It's not going to be a problem, because instead of we tracking them, the downside, of course, is that we will not be able to know if they click these things or not. But I guess that's better than ending up in spam. So there's a trade-off there, of course.
Absolutely. So I guess if you see your domain and your email address there in the footer, don't freak out, but just make sure that they are of the right type, meaning that they're the ones that are not tracked. And if you had doubt, hit the chat button down there and ask you guys on support whether you're using the right methodology or not, because definitely avoiding spam should be quite high on your priority list when you're sending emails.
Definitely. So yeah, and you can just check in the block itself. It says not tracked URL caption works, then you're good to go.
Cool. Excellent. All right. So here's this may be a little bit more techy or complicated question, but it's one that we've been getting frequently, and people are asking about. What the question I typically get, Sebastian, and it's also asked in the questions that came in up front, were how do you insert a questionnaire into an email, like a form into an email, which at least I know that form code is not going to fly well in a lot of email clients. So the question around how do I create kind of a survey in the email, is that possible? And do you have some good examples of how to do that?
Yeah, I prepared an example for that question. And yeah, as you said, forms in emails is generally a no-go, because at least the form code, the HTML code for the form, it will be filtered out. In most cases, it will not show. Some cases it will show, but will not function. And it's also so great, a great way to end up in the spam box as well. So don't do that. There is, however, a way, and I prepared a quick example where I have an eMarketeer email and an eMarketeer form. And this is going to be a little bit techy, so bear with me. But what we want to do here is if we look at the fields in the form, we have email address and also how satisfied are you with the product. So the form itself is not going to be showed anywhere. The interesting part here is to get the results into this form report, and we can do that actually by building URLs. And what I mean by that, if we go back to this campaign, I have added corresponding icons here. I'm very unsatisfied, unsatisfied, satisfied, or very satisfied. So these will correspond to how satisfied are your question in the form. And as you saw, I had 4 options there. And what I can do is to, if they click any of this button, I can make the form be submitted with that data. So this is going to be a little techy. So I'm just going to go to the publish options of the evaluation form and go to the website integration and the form. The reason I do this is because I want to know the names of these questions. So because then if I know the names of the questions, I can add them into the URL and make it a clickable button. So let's see here what we got. First of all, we need to take this URL. So this is a post URL. This is being used to send in the data. Maybe I should, we're going to go back here. Let's see. I'm going to open up a notepad here just so I can build the URL real quick.
This is just where I'll remind people that this will be in the recording, so you can go back and replay step by step if it gets too technical. Once you've done it once or twice, it's not daunting anymore. It's just following the recipe that Chef Sebastian is showing here.
Yeah. So let's see here. Then we're going to need this. This is to identify which form it is. So it's the one with the name M. So we're going to go here and add a query parameter to this M equals, and then we paste this. And then the next thing we're going to do is to use the email, because we want to identify who it is. And we're going to use the name for this one. We copy that. And yet again, here we're going to do a little bit of personalization as well. And query equals contact field email, like so. And then we're going to go to the website integration again, and then we're going to use this one, name, like this. Sorry for this stickiness. Equals 1. So if they are very unsatisfied, it's going to be a 1. So now we build the link. I think I might need to replace any sort of spaces here with. No, I don't need to do that. Sorry. Right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to now we built the link for very unsatisfied. And if we go to one-click server mail, I'm going to go to this image block, and I'm just going to paste the link here. So this is going to be the value for 1, so it's very unsatisfied. And if we just go to the next one, we're going to add value 2, so that's unsatisfied. And the image 3, we're going to add satisfied and a 3 at the end there, and then a 4 for this. So basically that is the idea. What we've done now is basically, if they click, we're going to send all this information in the URL to this function here, to this place. And so they just have to click and the form will populate by its own. And we can also see who, if we want it to be anonymous, we don't have to use the email field. This is just to identify which contacts submitted the data. So yeah, I know this is a little bit techy, but that's how I would do it.
Do they go straight to the thank you page then, Sebastian? They're not seeing the form at all?
They go to the thank you page of the form. Yes. So when we click the link, we go to the thank you page, and you can of course redirect them to anywhere you'd like. So we have, of course, the thank you page. So you can use the hosted thank you page, or you can use a custom URL for that. I guess
now, this really opens up a lot of use cases, right? So you can ask questions about satisfaction like you just did. You capture the data. It's in the form, even though they never visited the form. So you have the reporting capabilities, but you also have automation capabilities, right? So
yes.
If somebody answered very unsatisfied, you can send a notifier to the sales team or to the account management team saying, here's somebody who's very unsatisfied. Or if they answered very satisfied, maybe you want to send a notifier to the marketing team saying maybe there's a user story or user case here. So it really opens up a lot of options there from that one-click email.
Yeah, and I would probably use this as the first one-click email should probably be an automated email itself. Send it out from like a trigger form or some other automated email that is delayed or something like after a product purchase or something like that.
Right.
Just to make sure that it's not sent like in bulk, I would say.
Yeah.
Because then you might get some issues with robot clicks and so on. But when you're sending just a single email, then that usually isn't a huge deal, as far as I know.
Very useful. I just want to make sure that we are on the hour. I know we can stay on for a little bit longer. There are still some questions that are unanswered. I can also guarantee that we won't get through them all because there are a lot. But if you need to drop out at 11 here, thank you so much. We will continue with the questions, but just letting you know if you need to leave now, thank you for your time. Check out eMarketeer.com/webinars because we do have some pretty interesting upcoming webinars in the near future, and I'll include a link to that page in the follow-up email as well. So for you guys leaving now, I hope that you found this useful, and let us know in the evaluation whether you would like to do more of these, and maybe I can convince Sebastian to join again in future Ask an Expert webinars. Okay, I just wanted to get that out of the way if people need to go on to other meetings. I want to keep you on for a little longer, Sebastian, as there are some interesting questions that came in. Some have come through via the chat box here. They have to do actually with the questionnaire automations from email. So I guess that was kind of answered by your last example there. So that's pretty cool. When we're on forms, there are some questions around styling a form, changing fonts in a form. What can you do? Because let's be honest, the eMarketeer templates on forms, they aren't very varied. They're there and they are what they are. What
Indeed.
kind of flexibility do we have here?
So unless we're talking, are we going to go in a little bit on coding, because that's unfortunately inevitable when it comes
that's
to
why
styling.
You're here.
Yeah. But so I can give you a few pointers. I'm actually not going to go through this form. I'm thinking maybe styling an iframe form would be a good use case, because that's probably when you want it the most to adhere to your identity is when you add it to your own site. So having the right fonts and colors is going to be very important then, so it doesn't look mismatched. So I'm just going to go ahead and add as a sign up form here into this campaign and use the minimal one because that's going to work best when it comes to adding iframe forms. I'm just going to call it iframe. And yeah, so it might not look much for the world as it is now, but what you can do is to use the edit fonts and colors, and this will give you this ancient box where we can actually style certain elements of the form, like link colors and background color. Most typical background color would be white, but then, like if you would like to use another type color there, you can just use the hexadecimal color code for it. Should be available in your design guidelines. If not, if you don't have it, you can just copy it from your own website. Link colors as well. And then we have the different elements here called headline, text, question, and answer options. So here you can decide on the font you want to use. But if you want to use a custom font, you need to make sure that they have that font or they will not render. Unless, of course, you embed that font into the form itself. So I'm just going to quickly show you how you can do that. And I'm going to use Google Fonts as an example. They have a huge library of fonts so that you can use free of charge. And it's more complicated if you have like a corporate font that's in like font files, but let's see what we got here. Any font that strikes your fancy?
Comic Sans by any chance? Just kidding.
Not needed. You can use this one in theme, it seems to be. Select this style, and when I select this style, I get it in the right side hand here, and basically I can just copy this little snippet here, and I need to remember the font family. It's called in theme. I copy that. I go back into edit the iframe, and I can use the HTML part here. Now the coding part comes in. It's waiting.
It's waiting. Yep.
Yeah.
That always seems a lot longer when you're demoing.
Indeed. So maybe I can just try again, see if it works better now. It did.
It did,
yeah. So we are going to make sure we paste this snippet between these two style boxes here. And so it will say link ref and all of this. So this is basically us embedding the font now into this form, and then we can just apply that, open this dialog again, and then we can make sure we add in theme.
It was item, by the way.
Well,
ITIM, just
item.
item.
Like that. Yeah, very good catch. We just add it everywhere, and it should now use that font instead, and also be working basically everywhere. The only place I would caution is, of course, the confirmation emails that might not necessarily, if you have confirmation email on the form, might not necessarily show the font, especially in Outlook, because Outlook is Outlook and will always give you trouble.
So what you're saying there is what you do in a browser, for instance, on a landing page or in a form, you have a lot more flexibility with regards to fonts than you do in email, right?
Definitely. It's much more easier to develop things for forms and websites than it is for email, because there's so much to take into consideration there.
Yeah.
But if it looks good when you're playing around with it on your web page or in your form, it most likely will work. However, email, you can't say the same. So if you go bananas there, there could be issues.
So even here,
But
even though you say this is technical, I mean, even as a non-techie, you're finding a font, you're copying a snippet, you don't need to understand what's in the snippet, you're placing it in a specific way, and you're naming the font in the fonts and colors tab. So even for a non-techie with your recipe, this is definitely doable.
yeah, I would say so. Then it
Yeah.
comes to the send button is hard coded to be Arial here, so we need to go into the font here, into the CSS part here and find what we say input type button or input type submit here. So here we can also add a font family, font family, because it's not there right now. Item, was that
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. You're good. Yes.
Arial sans. So this is just fallback fonts that you usually have. And then we can also change the color to something else, maybe. Oh, no. So this is where you would change the background color of the button as well. So if you want another color, let's see if we can use RGB. So this is probably going to be red, very red. Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can change the sizings and whatnot with the
In the
of
HTML part.
the. Now you can change the size
Okay.
of the texts, of course. So now this was a very small font, so we can just make it a little bit bigger, perhaps something like that. And yeah, you can of course also change the dimensions of this button, making it a little bit bigger by changing the paddings in it, and so on.
I think my
But yeah,
takeaway here would be, because I've seen some of the forms that our clients are using, and when you look at it, you're just like, is that an eMarketeer form? So basically, if you have a web developer or a web artist on your team, you can go to town with our forms and you can really modify the heck out of them and make them look absolutely smashing with background images and whatnot. So I guess the main idea here is changing fonts and modifying. It's not daunting. If you really want to reconfigure the whole look and feel, you can do that. You can do that on that HTML tab. So yeah.
I would say at least when you use the form export, or rather the website integration form, that's where you really can, because then you have total freedom. Now you're actually a bit limited to the way that we structure the questions, like and what classes we use and so on. So not everything is possible in the what we call the hosted form, but once you get that form code and give it to your web developer, they can do anything with it as long as they keep the namings of each question intact.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, we're almost 10 minutes past, and I want to make sure that we respect the time of our participants here. So I'm going to nick back the screen, Sebastian, just very briefly here, and go into the slides here. And thank you so much for your input here and your expertise on answering these questions. That was very, very useful, I hope. We want to make sure that you understand that you're not alone. Sebastian and his team, our support and consultants folks are there. You'll find the chat in eMarketeer where you can ask questions. If you have an eMarketeer reseller or eMarketeer consultant partner, they know a lot of this stuff as well. So eMarketeer is such a flexible tool. There's so much stuff you can do, and we're here to help you do that. So just reach out if you want. As I mentioned, some webinars coming up. We have the next two ones are focusing on eMarketeer and SuperOffice CRM. The first one is 5 things you can do to become a marketing rock star in your SuperOffice CRM. So some tips and tricks on how to really position your marketing projects, share your data in a meaningful way inside SuperOffice, and doing that using eMarketeer. Then we're going to deep dive into all of the SuperOffice automations that we have available in eMarketeer, and that's November 10th. So going through each of the automations that eMarketeer can fire off to SuperOffice and see what they do and how they look in SuperOffice. And then on November 12th, we'll be looking at online event management using eMarketeer. So how to set up an invitation and registration, confirmations, reminders, notifying your sales team, keeping the whole management process on a pilot. is what we're going to look at on November 12th. So those are just some of the upcoming webinars. Check out eMarketeer.com/webinars for the upcoming webinars, as well as all of our on-demand stuff that's there. There's a lot of content there going into different scenarios using eMarketeer and also SuperOffice CRM. So I guess that's it for us today. A lot of questions. Thank you so much for them. There are still a lot of unanswered. We're aware. I'll see how we can find a smart way to get back to you guys with questions to your unanswered, with answers to your unanswered questions there. So rest assured, they will not be forgotten. Again, Sebastian, thank you so much for playing along here. That was really interesting, and I think that we will be seeing more of each other in upcoming webinars like this if you're game.
Yeah, if you say so.
Okay, good stuff. Well, thank you for your expertise, Sebastian. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. I hope to see you at an upcoming webinar and to see what you do in eMarketeer with the tricks you've learned today. So until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.
Take care. Stay safe.